Cut that, Arthur.
Yeah, cut that, Arthur.
We're so rude to future Arthur.
Hello and welcome to A Century in Cinema. My name is Arthur.
And I'm Andrew.
And I'm Tara.
Woo!
Hello.
And this is a podcast where we discuss a classic film from every year. This week we're in 1958 with a Czech film, Invention for Destruction, from director Karl Zeman. All right, we have a guest this week, Tara Leblanc. Welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here virtually.
Yeah, Tara is just a really great person to discuss film with, and she's got a really great eye, especially when it comes to stop motion animation. And I thought this would be the perfect episode to bring her on. When this Blu-ray set was released, she came over and we watched all of them together, including the short films. So I just thought it was a perfect idea to have her on for this episode.
Yeah, and I've gotten so many great movie recommendations and learned so much about film and film history from you and your crowd. And it's really great to be able to share some of my knowledge and interest about animation with you.
Wonderful.
Andrew told me you're a graphic designer. Do you want to tell our listeners a little bit about what you do?
So I've had some various experience in different areas of art. I did some stop motion animation in college, and I worked for a 3D computer graphics company for a while, and I've done some indie comic book stuff. So kind of just various graphic art.
Yeah, you've been all over the place in the art world. That's great. Like, what are some of your favorite films then?
Let's see. Who Framed Roger Rabbit? Is that a good one to start with?
Oh, yeah. I love that movie.
Eraserhead. Hellraiser. The Scarlet Pimpernel. Just a good variety, I guess.
Well, before we get into the meat of our episode, for any new listeners, you can find where our movies are streaming or available to rent online in the link in our show notes. If you're listening and enjoying the show, drop us a rating on Apple Podcasts. Write us a little something nice. We always appreciate it. It helps new listeners find the show on the charts, and it lets us know how we're doing. So thank you. What do we do next?
Arthur, what's going on in 1958?
History lesson. What's going on in 1958? Okay, not a ton. It's a relatively quiet year. No huge events. The biggest thing I see is the Munich air disaster when a plane crashes carrying the Manchester United football team. And the entire football team is killed in that accident. It takes them a decade to put the team back together.
Damn.
I know nothing about sports, but that sounds like a big event in the sports world. It's the beginning of a famine in China that will last until 1961. The World's Fair takes place in Brussels. This is the first World's Fair since the end of the war. The United States and Soviet Russia launch more satellites. If you'll remember last year, Russia launched Sputnik. This year, NASA is created, and 14-year-old Bobby Fischer wins the U.S. chess championship. A quick look at Czechoslovakia, where our film this week comes from. Back in 1948, there was a coup, and the Communist Party took over the country. Now it is part of the Eastern Bloc under the influence of the Soviet Union. After Stalin died, Nikita Khrushchev became the leader of the Soviet Union and tried to move away from Stalinism. We've mentioned this before, but it's notable that the Czech Communist Party is not a fan of Khrushchev, and they are still trying to carry on Stalin's more totalitarian policies. And I'm probably missing a ton. I'm sorry to say I know very, very little about Czechoslovakia and the Eastern Bloc. So you can follow that up with your own research at home, everyone.
I want to circle back to the Bobby Fischer Game of the Century. Do you know the musical Chess, Arthur?
Oh, yes. I love that musical. It's super fun.
It's so good.
Yeah, and chess, that's all big Cold War competition, isn't it? That's fun. Now, 1958, Andrew, what kind of films do we got going on?
Oh my gosh, I took that damn nap and didn't even, I knew I was forgetting something for this episode. Okay.
Oh, and also we can go over some more Czech films and Czech animation, kind of just in general from the 20th century, but there's some pretty cool Czech animation happening around then.
Oh, tell us about some.
One of the most, famous, notorious, taught in film history classes stop motion films is called The Hand by a Czech animator named Jiří Trinka, and it's about communist or totalitarian government's control over arts. Gosh, when was it made? I want to say it was made in like the mid 60s or like the early 60s. There's like a really strong tradition of stop motion animation and puppet animation in Czech films, and a lot of really strong animators come out of Czech film tradition. Animation in Eastern Europe in general is really different from American animation, and I can go over that like more a bit.
I'm kind of curious, why did this period in history and in this region produce so many people that were pushing forward in innovative animation techniques?
Well, from like the beginning of animation, continental Europe was always more avant-garde and abstract than, say, America, for example. Like American animation is very flat-footed, and European animation is where they do all sorts of weird and crazy stuff. Yeah. And I don't know what it is about the Czech national character that just makes them really good at just strange and innovative animation, but it's like Jiří Trinka and Karl Zeman and Jan Spankmeyer, who a lot of people have probably heard of, and Jiří Barta, and a bunch of filmmakers just do really interesting work and come out of this tiny little country.
1958, I feel like just because we're talking about like miniatures and effects and stuff, we have to bring up two masterpieces from this year. One being The Blob, which is such a fun, campy horror film with some really fun and creative effects.
I only saw the original Blob recently.
Doesn't Steve McQueen look like he would rather be anywhere else in that film?
I mean, he's a 40-year-old teenager. They usually do.
And The Fly with Vincent Price. Okay, I want to talk about The Fly for just a second, because that movie is like supposed to be scary for younger people. And I watched this one for the first time like 5 years ago, and it terrified me. The ending was horrible. Have you guys seen it?
No.
I haven't.
Okay, I'm going to spoil it. Unlike the David Cronenberg one where he's like molting into a fly and stuff and it's all body horror, this one is about like a man whose head is becoming like a fly head. So it's kind of similar. And then the final gag of the whole film is that there's a fly with Vincent Price's head, and it gets caught in a spider web. And the final shot of the movie is this giant spider like crawling towards him on the web, and he's just screaming, help me, and then it fades, and that's the end of the movie.
Oh geez.
And I don't know why, but maybe I was just like in a different state of mind or something, but when I watched it, it freaked me out like so bad. I was like, that's not what I want to happen to me.
I've got to see that.
Great films that people should check out from 1958. Of course, Alfred Hitchcock releases Vertigo this year. Many people consider it to be his best film. Definitely one of my favorites. Also has a really weird, trippy animation sequence right in the middle of it. Really great stuff. Touch of Evil comes out this year. Kurosawa continues to dominate the international cinema market with The Hidden Fortress, which is a huge influence on many films to come in American culture. Ashes and Diamonds is released this year. It's a very great anti-war film from Poland by Andrzej Wajda. And The Ballad of Narayama is like my number one recommendation from this year. Probably my favorite film from this year. It's a story about this tiny village, and the old people in it are taken up to this snowy mountain to die in the winter. That's just how the cycle of life works there. And the whole thing is designed to look like a huge no theater piece. And they're playing that instrument that we discussed during Page of Madness, and I already forgot what it's called. But it's all these crazy practical effects and these beautiful sets. And highly recommend that film.
Well, let's talk about our film of the week. Invention for Destruction. Tara, do you want to go over the broad strokes of the plot for us?
Sure. So the problem with this movie is that as many times as I try to watch it and get an idea of what the plot is, I always get distracted by how pretty the visuals are, and I lose track of the subtitles.
I had the same problem.
Yeah, it takes like 3 viewings. So the film is based on a novel by Jules Verne called Facing the Flag, and the plot mostly follows the plot of the novel, but it has a romantic subplot which you didn't have in the novel. So it starts out with our main character, Simon, who is a scientist, and he is the first-person narrator who you find in every sci-fi novel from the 1890s. And he lives in this wonderful retro-futuristic world where people have like fanciful airplanes and submarines and things like that. And he goes to visit his teacher, who is in a sanatorium and working on a new invention. And Simon and the professor get captured by pirates. So it's very exciting right off the bat. The professor is working on like a alternate source of energy, and he gets captured one night and put on a boat, and Simon just gets caught up in it. And it's revealed that they've been captured by a extremely rich, eccentric supervillain count who wants a giant weapon of mass destruction to control the world. It's really basically a James Bond plot.
It is.
That's very fair.
They get taken captive, put on a boat. They're heading to like their super secret pirate hideout. On the way, the pirate ship sinks another ship, and this is where it kind of diverges from the book. And from that ship, a young woman escapes and is set adrift. And she gets picked up by the pirate ship, but she doesn't like meet Simon yet. So eventually they go to the secret pirate hideout, which is inside of a volcano, and you see the smoke coming out of the volcano, and it turns out that the smoke is from all their factories where they're working on like secret weaponry. And so it's like this rich count has just collected all of these scientists and pirates and just this coterie of supervillains to work on his plot for taking over the world. So they force the professor to start working on the eponymous Invention for Destruction. And Simon is kind of off to the side, and he spends most of the movie trying to escape somehow. So he tries to send out a balloon with like a note attached to it to get to people to warn them that they've got this secret weapon of mass destruction being built out here. The news comes back to the pirates that the powers of the world are aware of their plot, so they try and like escalate things and develop it faster. And then there's like kind of a convoluted bit where Simon tries to get out again, and he almost escapes underwater, and then he gets picked up by a submarine and then comes back. But towards the end of it, he finally meets the girl, and they work on escaping, and they manage to get into a hot air balloon just as all the powers of the world are coming for a big giant battle. So they blast off into the sky, and then the professor finally realizes that they're going to use his scientific source of energy to perform evil. So he ends up blowing up the entire island, and that's the end.
That was great.
That was great. Very investing. And it's so funny because what you said at the beginning is how I feel about it too. Like, I feel like after hearing that, I'm like, there were just so many moments that I didn't even capture in the plot. And I was watching it with you.
I know, twice. The thing is, the plot is really great. Like, it's a very exciting plot, but you just get distracted by how beautiful the movie is.
Yes, absolutely. So there are some kind of obscure films on this list that were my recommendation, but I would say this one is pretty obscure, and it was already on the list, if I remember correctly. Arthur, is that correct?
Yeah.
What inspired you to make this your pick for this year?
Oh, man, you look at a film like this, and it looks so unique and fun, and it just spoke to me. Also, I love science fiction. I love, as I've told you in the past, I like H.G. Wells, and Jules Verne is sort of the other late 1800s sci-fi author with all the classic stories. Journey to the Center of the Earth, Around the World in 80 Days, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. There's a ton of great science fiction films coming out of the 1950s, so it only makes sense that some of them are adapted from Jules Verne novels. This one just called out to me. I had to see it. What a unique animation style. The poster looks so enticing, and the film looks just like the poster. That surprised me.
Yes.
The poster is not some stylized artistic piece. It's basically screenshots from the film itself, and that's so cool.
Yeah, we've got to talk about the look of it.
Well, we got to talk about initial reactions first. I want to know, like, what did you think, Arthur?
So, yeah, I absolutely love the production design throughout, not just the animation, but I love the costumes and the sets, and all of it blends together so well. I love the stop motion animation, of course, and the monsters running around, the squids and the sharks and everything. Yeah, it's a very fun film. And it reminded me a lot of the silent films that we watched from way back when.
Absolutely.
It made me think how we're far enough along in our list now that this film is kind of a nostalgic piece for those old sci-fi silent films like Méliès's stuff, The Journey to the Moon. And it evokes a lot of the same stylistic choices that those films made, but now it's doing it with modern, for the 1950s, special and visual effects. And it's really cool to see the progression in filmmaking and animation.
So the set that I have, it comes with this, it comes with the fabulous Baron Munchausen, and it comes with Journey to the Beginning of Time. When I first bought it, the first one we all watched together was the fabulous Baron Munchausen, because Tara had seen that one before and was so excited that it was like a nice Blu-ray edition, because if I remember correctly, the version that you had watched before Tara was like kind of low quality.
The subtitles were kind of janky.
Yeah. So we got to watch it, and it was so beautiful and so much fun. And then that night, we actually popped in the Invention for Destruction disc, because it had all of these shorts that he'd animated and made. And we loved them all so much, so we agreed that we were going to watch the rest of the set together. And we got together, I think, like a few weeks later, and we watched Journey to the Beginning of Time first, and none of us really enjoyed it at all.
It has pacing issues.
And then we watched Invention for Destruction later that evening, and when it was over, I thought, oh, well, that was my favorite one in the set for sure. Because I don't know, there's something about the black and white styling of it, the way everything looks like a book drawing, like just the whole style of it, I thought was so much fun. And yeah, I loved it. Was that your first time watching Invention for Destruction, Tara? Was last year?
Yeah, when I saw it. So yeah, I'd seen the Baron Munchausen, or the Czech name for it was Baron Prasil, and that was amazing. That was the first time that I had seen this one. It was late at night, so I wasn't appreciating it as much as I should have, so I was really glad to watch it again.
But even when it was late at night, when they were on the bicycles underwater ringing the little bells, we got really excited about that.
I love that. The first time I saw it, I was completely blown away by just the design of it, like the completely coherent design to make it look like a late 19th century illustration with all the like engraving effects. That's what like struck me immediately, because it had the Baron Munchausen also has the sets that are sort of 2D illustrations like this one does. So this one has like the boats and everything, but the costumes that have all stripes and checks on them so that it looks like an engraved illustration, that was just so cool. Like such a neat attention to detail to make
that, yeah,
them look like they're part of the world.
Tara, you keep saying that it's the 1800 illustrations and that kind of thing. What is this style of drawing illustrations? What is it actually called, and what is it?
So it's called Intaglio, which is spelled Intaglio. So like for the first 450 years of book printing, the way that people did illustrations was to basically make a stamp. Early on, it would be like just a wood block that you cut your design out of and you put ink on it and then you stamp it on the page. And that's how you get your illustration. And as time went on, the stamps became fancier and more complicated. So the process that they were using at the time of like Jules Verne's books were being published, it was mostly steel plate engraving. So it's like instead of cutting into a wood block with a little knife, you would I think it's like a chemical process where you would get your drawing and then you just scratch into a steel plate with like all these crosshatch marks and these lines to like have the outlines and the areas of light and dark, and that would be put into the printing press along with the text, and you would put the ink on it and it would be stamped onto the page.
That makes sense.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's so cool because it definitely evokes and reminds you immediately of all those old books, and especially the Jules Verne inventions and everything. It's so fun. Yeah,
and I love also the where he films like the mechanical pumps and things. It looks like old Victorian diagrams of machines.
Yeah, for sure.
Like it all looks like a scientific illustration.
Come to life. It's fantastic.
Yeah, they called it in the American dub or the review, they called it, what was it? Mistimation? Something like that?
Mistimation.
I don't know. It's such an interesting effect where it's like halfway animated, where instead of trying to make like an animation emulate reality, you try to make reality emulate the illustration.
Yeah, that is what's going on. Cool.
I love watching it. It's so funny. When we were watching it this most recent time, I thought, man, you could just have no sound. You could just have some really trippy music going on over this, and it would be just as effective for me. Like, it's just so gorgeous. And you know, it's this movie magic that doesn't feel explicable while you're watching it. It's not like Orpheus. You know, when we discussed Orpheus, we were talking about how while you're watching it, you can tell how every effect is being done very easily, but you're so impressed by it and it's doing such a good service for the story that it doesn't distract from it. But then you watch a movie like this, and there are just whole long sequences where you're thinking, I have no idea how to even approach making something like this, how it would be done. And I'm okay with that. It's just so cool to watch. It feels so beautiful.
Yeah, it's incredible. Karl Zeman was a magician, really. Like, in the special features, there was that one little bit of special features that we watched, and they show, like, he has the in-camera effects and, like, the billboard and the perspective tricks, but it's still so, like, incredible to try and wrap your mind around how he's composited all of this and set it up and done the forced perspective and everything.
Yeah, I actually ended up watching the documentary they mentioned in that special feature film adventurer Karl Zeman from 2015. And the entire documentary is they're taking these film students and showing them shots from his movies and having them go out into the world and recreate them in the way that he made them. Yeah, but even after that film, like, they showed how they did certain sequences and stuff, but they didn't go into, for instance, and I'm sure it was stop motion with like 2D cardboard or something, but they didn't go into how he was able to mix the car together and then the 2D part of the car wheels are moving. You know, like, there are certain aspects of the film that are almost better off just like, oh, that's just fun to look at. You know, like, just I liked being tricked. I enjoyed just sitting back and letting the movie trick me.
Yeah, for sure. So who wants to talk about Karl Zeman?
I can give like a brief overview of his life. His dad wanted him to be in business, and like there was a lot of pressure on him from his family to become sort of an entrepreneur. And he found filmmaking through soap advertisements. What he liked to do, he had these little models in his home, and he liked to take snapshots of them to make flip picture books with them. He filmed birds and horses, and he loved looking at the film frame by frame to see exactly how birds flew and horses galloped, and then would attempt to make his little models do the same thing. Pretty early post-war era Czechoslovakia, he got jobs working on little shorts that were for TV, and he had shorts that all centered around this one character. I can't remember his name, but his name translates to someone who's good at fixing things, and that was the whole theme. Was this Reformation? It's just this guy bumbling around, and he'll fall over and break something or like split open a piece of wood, and then he has to put it back together, and it's just really cute, short, animated things. And then he was able to develop that concept further into A Christmas Dream. And A Christmas Dream is interesting because it was all made with a bunch of people, and there were these different types of effect that were being used for it. We don't really know what it looked like because the entire film was destroyed in a fire, and they had to remake it. And Karl Zeman said, I know exactly what we can do to redo these effects for the dream sequence. And he brought up the stop motion inserts and doing the composite photography that we see expounded upon in this film. And then that short film went to the Cannes Film Festival, and it won Best Animated Short. So from that point forward, he was given a bigger budget. He worked on a full-length animated film that I haven't seen, but his first big breakthrough was Journey to the Beginning of Time. And it was actually originally meant to be an educational film about dinosaurs, which I think does show in the movie itself. That film ended up being very popular in Czechoslovakia. So Invention for Destruction is sort of his big risk blank check film. Blank check.
Oh, I got it. Thank you. Very good.
Put $1 in the pun jar.
I gotta collect those dollars somehow. So he made this film, and it was based on Jules Verne, and there was a lot of risk going into it. But even when they were looking at the dailies, because so much of this stuff was done in camera, and the stuff that wasn't was so easy to fill in because of how it all looked with the sets and costumes, the studio was never worried at all. I mean, they were worried when he was first talking about the concepts, but even the script had drawings in it of what the shots would look like. So it was very vision forward from the beginning. And then it was, of course, released in America as The Fabulous World of Jules Verne. And I think it got released into 52 different countries, which was a really big deal at this time for Czechoslovakia. And it was a huge success around the world. And so they said, okay, what you got next? And that's when he made The Fabulous Baron Munchausen, which is really great as well, and just a complete acid trip of a movie. It's great. Yeah, that's sort of where he was. I mean, he left behind a huge legacy. I wouldn't call him especially prolific. He only made a few films, but he worked all the way through the mid-70s. And it's so weird the documentary didn't go into how he died. And then on Wikipedia, it just says he died on April 5th, 1989. He was 78. So, yeah, I mean, maybe it was just old age. But normally it would even just say that in the Wikipedia article.
He went to the moon with Baron Munchausen.
He fully launched himself into space and told his wife, tell them I died. And she says, how? And he said, what? And then the ship left. Have either of you seen the Terry Gilliam approach to Baron Munchausen? I think it's called The Many Adventures of Baron Munchausen with John Hurt as Baron Munchausen. He was a huge Karl Zeman fan himself. He loves those movies. He's actually in that documentary and talks about some of the techniques. And his Baron Munchausen is all practical effects, all huge sets. It's this gorgeous, giant budget film.
But Journey to the Beginning of Time and Invention for Destruction are both based on Jules Verne properties. So clearly a big fan of Jules Verne.
I think that a couple of his later films also are based on Jules Verne.
Yeah. And I would say Journey to the Beginning of Time is lightly inspired by Journey to the Center of the Earth.
Okay.
I mean, I do want to double back to Terry Gilliam and talk about how this inspired all the Monty Python animations.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Because it was like, gosh, when did Monty Python come out? Sometime in the 60s, right?
I believe so.
There's a video on YouTube of Terry Gilliam talking about how much he likes Karl Zeman, and it's obvious in like his animations how he uses this collage style that Karl Zeman uses a lot, and it's such a unique style of animation and it like collage work that I've never seen utilized to the same extent And I was watching an interview with Terry Gilliam, and he was bemoaning his experience with studio executives and how difficult it was to get an artistic film made in Hollywood. And this film, Invention for Destruction, is so fully realized and like artistically cohesive that you can really tell that Karl Zeman had a vision and he stuck to it, and like he controlled every single aspect of it. And that's something that animators do, really, especially stop motion animators, because you have to manually create every single frame. You have to make all of the sound. You have to make a world completely from scratch. So you can't leave a lot of things up to post-production. You can't get a lot of editing or outside input if it's something that's like created frame by frame. So I think that that sort of like complete realization and attention to detail was something that Karl Zeman brought to his film process, where even though it's a live action film, it's really produced more like an animated film.
That's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
Ray Harryhausen, also a stop motion animator working in the giant monster genre at this time, exercised a ton of control on his films too. I don't even know who directed most of them because he's the stop motion animator. Yeah, he's the one who's in charge.
Were you talking about it, Andrew, where he was doing all the in-camera effects so he was able to show people the dailies to see exactly what it was going to look like?
Yes.
Because we were talking about comparing this film to, I guess you might call it, a sort of animation collage film that you get nowadays, which is all the big explosion films where half of it is CGI and things like that.
Where none of it is in camera at all. Where they now they're looking at, actors against a green screen, and it really is just, well, hope for the best. Hopefully
it's like completely backwards.
Yeah. Hopefully those underpaid animators who are working 16-hour days will make this look nice.
Yeah. And this, with all the real effects, is so believable. Like, they were making a point in one of the documentaries that one of the billboard in-camera effects was casting a shadow on the actor, but it was all still outdoors and had the same lighting, so it was completely believable. So it draws you in because you can tell that it's real people interacting with real things, even though it's all props with drawings on them. And it's so much more engaging than having CGI put in after the fact. Or at least I think so, but I'm a Luddite.
No, I would agree with you, but I also am the same. So
I also feel like Wes Anderson was inspired by this sort of animation and this
very
look.
Good point. I had not even thought about that.
Especially in a film like Life Aquatic, which has the funny submarines running around and everything. Like, that feels like this film.
Yeah, when it's the big reveal of the animal that he's been hunting for so long. It's this gorgeous stop-motion animated fish, and I love it so much.
The submarines in this movie are adorable. There's one with, like, 4 little flippers, and it has, like, eye windows and a little top hat porthole.
Yeah.
It's so charming.
That's what impresses me the most with the film. The effect work is amazing, but on top of the effect work from a practical standpoint being so good, the design has so much character and imagination. It just never feels like nothing ever happens in a way that would make it like realistic, And that's also a big difference between this and something that's using CGI, where they're sort of trying to achieve something that looks like it could take place in our world. This movie does not attempt that at all. Everything is designed to be a part of this fictional Jules Verne world. And then he also just knows great composition. Every shot looks cinematic, and you would think with so many layers going into it and all of that, there'd be a possibility of him not being a very solid filmmaker, because you have to be a good filmmaker as well as a good animator to make something like this. But he knows that too, and the lighting is perfect, and every shot is interesting and dynamic. It's just incredible to watch, truly.
And it's funny. He has great comedic timing.
We have been needing a lighter tone film.
What are you talking about, Andrew?
I mean, the guy does blow up the entire island at the end.
It's true. But even the explosion, it's like the one truly like 2D animated moment, and it looks like a Pink Panther cartoon.
Like, the plot of this is clearly inspired by current events going on with like this doomsday machine and threatening the world because there's now nukes proliferating into various countries.
Oh yeah, it's very Cold War. We can talk about the American introduction with not Rod Serling.
Oh, yeah.
Did you get a chance to watch that? Is that on the channel, Arthur?
It is on the Criterion channel, yeah.
It was just funny that, it it was just funny that they had to do this explanation, but then I felt like the explanation only made the technique even more mysterious. Calling it mistimation was, I don't know, made me think, wait, how does that make anything make any more sense to an American audience?
It feels very like Disney branding.
Very much so.
But I like how the host goes down the lineup of all the new technology coming out in rockets, planes, and brags about the nuclear submarine. He has to.
Yes, there is this weird United States, like, yes, you're about to watch a Czech film, but we're still the best.
Yeah.
This is a really
In the original book, the whole, like, the denouement comes because the scientist who is about to enable the destruction of the entire world has, like, this sudden patriotic revelation and is like, oh, there's French ships out there and I'm French and I shouldn't blow up the entire world because it includes French people. So it's like kind of interesting how that was interpreted at this time in history, where also in like the end of this film, the professor he doesn't have that experience with any like specific nation. It's kind of just like people in general, or he doesn't want to blow up the entire world.
Yeah, and throughout the rest of the film, he's sort of working on the invention because he thinks it's going to be a benefit for mankind. It's kind of like the scientists who were working on the Manhattan Project who were saying, you know, we're trying to delve into the power of the atom so we can harness it to have a powerful energy source, and then it gets turned into a bomb. So I thought it was interesting. It was mirroring that whole experience, but it was so light.
Yeah, it's like very timely underneath, but on the top of it you have like this fairy tale sort of adventure story.
When we were watching it, Tara, you mentioned that romantic subplot being an addition. You said the ending of them floating off in a balloon was a reference to something, and I can't remember what it was.
Oh, well, not a reference, but the ending of Baron Brazil is basically the same, where the hero and the girl blast off in a rocket at the end of that film, and in this one they first they disguise themselves and then they blast off in a rocket, and in this one they disguise themselves and then they float away in a balloon. So I think that Karl Zeman just had this image that he liked of, you know, the hero and the princess flying away into the sky.
Yes, very fairy tale. So should we talk about this review from the New York Times?
I liked it because it was so positive.
Yeah.
Although, so in the review they say that Karl Zeman is Polish.
Okay.
In all the other source material, I couldn't find him being called Polish, so I don't know what's up with that.
That is, I kid you not, that's exactly what I was going to ask, because I read that too. And I don't know if you remember this, Tara, but when we were watching this together, I referenced to this as a Polish animated film, and you corrected me that it was Czech.
Well, yeah, and then I read the review, and I was like, was Andrew right? Was I wrong? But, like, he was born in
Yes,
Czech
I double-checked
territory.
everything. I don't know where I got Polish from. I don't know where this critic got Polish from. I have no idea. Mandela effect, fully.
Some sort of Soviet country.
I mean, they're right next to each other. It's close enough.
It's so funny that you bring that up, because yes, when I read the review, I saw that at the end and thought, wait. This is a really nice review. They are very impressed by the film. And they even refer to it as Czech at the very beginning, in the opening sentence. So I just don't know.
I like that they mentioned the camels on roller skates.
Oh, that was funny.
Yes. I don't like. I feel a little bad for whatever this double feature film Bimbo the Great was, because clearly it could not hold a candle to Invention for Destruction.
Right? Howard Thompson is supposed to be reviewing a double feature, and he barely mentions Bimbo the Great before just praising this film, World of Jules Verne, as it was
Bimbo the Not So
called.
Great, apparently.
Exactly, Tara.
So you might notice that this review is from 1961. This film was not brought to the United States until 3 years later. And I just have a little fun fact. They mentioned that it's been imported by Warner Brothers and Joseph E. Levine, who I did not mention, but is the man responsible for discovering Godzilla back in 1954 and Americanizing it for the 1956 re-release. And I do find it funny that he is still changing the picture just a little bit for the American audiences, putting the little intro sequence there at the beginning like we talked about. And also here, I don't know if this is because of the American producers or if it's someone else, but they changed the names of all the cast.
Yes, I noticed that too.
Their character names or the cast names?
Cast names.
Whoa.
They anglicized them.
Well, that's sad.
Lou Talk, Ernie Navarra, and Jane Zalata. So you have Lou, Ernie, and Jane. And then if you go look on Letterboxd at the cast, I'm going to butcher all of these. Lubor Tokos, Jana Zatlokalova, Arnost Navratil. I am so sorry. I'm going to stop.
You're killing it. Literally. No, I'm just kidding. Joseph E. Levine has some very impressive producer credits, including The Night Porter, The Lion in Winter, The Graduate, Contempt, the Godard film. So he had his hand in the foreign market, not just in distributing to America, but also producing foreign films. So that's interesting. Seems like that was a big calling for him. I guess he was really drawn to foreign film. I love that. Oh, he produced Two Women.
Taking other people's work and just kind of reworking it a little bit and then re-releasing it. I sound bitter. I don't mind.
If you ever just want to see a horribly devastating war film, watch Two Women with Sophia Loren. He'd produce that as well. But yeah. So, I mean, but I guess what I'm saying is that I respect, of course, I think that him changing the titles and everything for America, of course I don't like that practice, but I also think he's probably doing what he has to do to get foreign films distributed in America at the time. I'm sure no studio would touch it if it was just a Czech film as it was. So I appreciate him doing that and getting these films distributed. And in my opinion, completely atoning for his sins by the end of his career, because like I said, he produced some classics and a lot of them are foreign films. So Sunflower as well. I mean, geez, I keep looking at these credits. This is so impressive. So
yeah, renaming this to be The World of Jules Verne just doesn't have the same draw to me, but that is a marketing gimmick. I mean, clearly Jules Verne is very popular in the 1950s. You have 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea coming out from Disney. You have Around the World in 80 Days. I know I'm missing one. There's an island.
The Mysterious Island, yes.
So yeah, I think there is just this zeitgeist during the 50s, this longing for simpler Victorian era technology, something that seems a little quaint and kind of fun compared to maybe the more horrifying atomic age technology that everyone is dealing with now.
I think the saddest part about titling the film The Fabulous World of Jules Verne is that there's no incentive to take a shot when the scientist dramatically says, "This is my invention for destruction." Takes away the whole motivation of that sequence for me.
What do we have next on our little list? What
I said
influences
recommendations for other films like this. We did kind of go into that, but Tara, if you do have other films to recommend, you just have a really great knowledge of this kind of movie, and I always love hearing you recommend and discuss them.
Well, it's hard because it's so unique. So when you think of like a movie like it, there's really no movie like it.
That's fair.
Like, you would have to, I guess, look through sort of the history of animation to find things that are similar. Like you mentioned George Méliès and early films like that. And I mean, definitely watch Baron Brazil. But even the Terry Gilliam movies, which are inspired by this, they're like tonally similar, but the effects are different. And I think that if I was going to recommend something that was like this, I would have to think of like the general sort of technique of putting it like in the universe and using like the art techniques from that specific universe. So it would have to be something like Into the Spider-Verse, honestly, that kind of has the same sort of tactic that they're going for, or the same approach to film where like we have this source material, which is art. Our source material isn't reality, our source material is art, and we're going to try and produce a film to emulate that work of art and kind of make a hyper-real version of it. But that's done with like comic books, and this is all, old-timey illustrations. And it's like really hard, I guess, to get Hollywood to produce that. So I'm sure that there are some things that use this technique, but it's probably like indie films or student films or something like that. There's one short animated stop-motion film, I want to say it's from the 80s or the 70s. It's called The Three Inventors, and it's all done with like white paper cutouts to look like lace doilies, and is about Georgian people inventing things. So that's like kind of similar, and that's also like just a really beautiful short film that people should watch. That's got kind of like a similar vibe going.
Oh, this looks cool.
Did you look it up?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
I see it on YouTube.
And then, of course, you also have a strong affinity for the Quay brothers.
Oh, I love the Quay brothers. But yeah, no, I was talking about like Eastern European animation, which is all dark and disturbing, and which I love in animation personally. Like it speaks to the subconscious. Like the Karl Zeman films are kind of, they're cheerful and they're uplifting. But a lot of other animation, especially stop motion animation, is really like, it's uncanny. Like it's literally the Freudian notion of uncanny, because it's like stuff that's not alive that comes to life. And I guess something in the Eastern European psyche or animation tradition is better for exploiting that sort of technique, where American animation doesn't really talk to the subconscious. It doesn't even really talk to the conscious. It talks to the toy store. So it's kind of interesting to see like animation techniques, but it goes a completely different direction.
It's interesting that you say that about American animation, because when you were mentioning that, and I would tend to agree with you, but when you were talking about speaking to the subconscious, it reminded me of, in the Dumbo episode that we recorded, I mentioned that the pink elephant sequence feels like it is designed to be something a kid represses, like something that a kid sees and then doesn't understand at all, and then sort of forgets about, and then later in adulthood sort of comes back to. And the little Quay brothers that I've seen that you've shown me, it feels very similar. Like there are images you can hook onto and remember, but there are always these small, subtle things happening, or like quick shots that will pass by that feel like, oh, there's no way that I, as like a human with my eyes, am able to comprehend what I just saw, but my brain stored it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I love that. I love that aspect of filmmaking, because it's sort of unique to film with a moving image.
Oh, I thought of another stop motion film. Jan Svankmajer has a short film based on the Castle of Otranto, and that's done with like paper cutouts. It's like this Gothic novel.
Definitely adding that one to the list. And sorry, you said it twice. Is it called Baron Brazil?
Well, the Czech title is Baron Brazil, unless they pronounce the P like a B.
I am so
but
sorry.
That's how it's spelled.
I am so sorry. I skipped on that. Okay, so okay, got it. That's the Karl Zeman film, of course.
Well, lovely. Do we have any final thoughts? Does anyone have anything else they'd want to say in relationship to this film, Invention for Destruction?
Watch it.
Absolutely. The Criterion set of Karl Zeman was a real kind of gift to just culture, because there hasn't been a solid release of his films in the States as far as home video goes. And watching it and getting to watch that documentary where so many great directors are talking about how much of an influence he has, it makes me excited, because, you know, I hope that more people watch it.
Oh, Andrew, do you want to talk about the box set with the...
I do. I want to give Criterion a shout out on this box art. I have the limited edition. I hope that it's still around. I don't know. But it opens up into 3 separate little leaflets, and they open to show you the disc. And whenever you open one of the leaflets, they all have their own pop-up. And so, yeah, the Baron Munchausen one, he's being launched from a cannon when you open it. Invention for Destruction, the balloon lifts out of the volcano while you open it. And Journey to the Beginning of Time, the canoe they're in is going down the river past a mammoth while you open it. And it's so good. It's just one of the best things they've ever designed and released. I love it so much.
I just remembered that there's a James Bond film. Like, there's an actual James Bond film where they have their secret base inside of a volcano. It's You Only Live Twice. So who knows if it was based on this, maybe.
Oh, yeah. God, they all blend together.
It's true. When she brought that up, because she brought that up when we were watching it, I said Thunderbolt, but you're right. It is. You're definitely right. It's Your Only.
And I thought it was Dr. No. That's funny.
I mean, there might be multiple where they do that. They do all blend together.
All right. I'm great. I feel good.
Yeah, this was great. Is there anything else you want to say, Tara?
Now I talk so much about all of my dubious areas of expertise.
No, thank you. That was really insightful. I appreciate it.
You truly killed it. This was so much fun.
Listen, you guys, Eastern European animation is so cool. It's just, I will nerd out about it anytime.
I love it. I'm so happy we gave you a platform to do it to the public. Yeah, this was so much fun. I really appreciate your insight, Tara. It was lovely having you on.
Thank you.
Well, next week, are we good for the next week tag, Arthur? Is there anything you want to say?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it.
Next week, we will be tackling our own mammoth, which is William Wyler's Ben-Hur. So, you know, put out a little prayer for us.
Another light and cheerful flick.
Exactly. Well, yeah, we took a break with Invention for Destruction. It is 222 minutes, so it's just under 4 hours.
I'm not going to ask you anything. I'm just gonna watch it.
I'm excited. The timing couldn't have worked out better, and it was complete coincidence. But my dad loves this movie, and so I'm so excited I get to watch it with him next week while I'm in Alabama. Cool. So
that'll be a nice experience for you. You'll be watching it with someone who likes it.
Mm-hmm.
They can explain why they like it.
As always, our loyal listeners can find where to stream Ben-Hur in our show notes. Yeah, I just want to emphasize again, great episode. I loved this. This was so much fun.
I had a lot of fun. Thanks for having me. This is great.
Thank you, Tara.
Of course. And thank you for being one of our loyal listeners. We appreciate you.
All right, let's I just want to give a shout out to all our Patreon members who keep the show running. Thank you all. You too can become a patron and get access to bonus episodes linked down in the show notes. You're listening on YouTube now, so like and subscribe and comment down below. Tell us if you've seen the film. What did you think of it? Did we miss anything? Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you for the next one.